So it's a relatively small number of negotiations that shape the conditions of our lives. And, most people don't do a lot of it, or they don't spend a lot of time around people that are really great at negotiation. And what I mean by this, as far as the negotiations that shape our lives, I'm talking about salaries, jobs, housing, financial arrangements, things related to dynamics and relationships between both intimate partners and friendships, so that the conditions that we wake up to every day and walk into were shaped by previous negotiations. So, the fundamental and underlying principles of negotiation, most of the advice that tends to be offered is tactic, which is good, but nervous system strategy and regulation is great. And so I, as an executive and leader, have negotiated hundreds of employment agreements, thousands of commercial contracts. And, as mentioned, like before, most of what we tend to see in popular culture is that negotiations are highly charged. You've got people that are like, I will not stand for this, because they're, it's like on TV and movies, and it's made to be entertaining. Because the fact of the matter is, like, if you actually watched most negotiations, they're tedious and they're boring, kind of like C-SPAN or, like a lot, in like negotiating commercial contracts, where you're just spending time, going over laborious like terms and conditions. But the thing that's happening in those moments is that like destinies are ultimately being shaped. And so is what looks really boring on the surface is, creating conditions that will like shape longer term arrangement. So like the reason I bring this up is like the boringness of it is important, is that for this video, I'm going to talk about overarching principles of negotiation. And then we're going to talk about two underlying fundamentals that control a negotiation. And this is going to be the first. I'm going to do four more videos that are connected to the negotiation and conflict section of the book on page 129. More on that later. So, overarching principles of negotiation. So, one of the first things that is a very common misunderstanding is when you've seen negotiation represented as two people like fighting it out, we really miss the trick that one of the first core principle is to avoid opposition, like for as long as absolutely possible, and to really focus on a shared outcome and a shared dream of what you're trying to create. So if this is an employment agreement, that this is the shared dream of working together. If this is a commercial contract, it's the shared partnership and what the partnership is ultimately going to be doing. And how how optimal that is going to ultimately be. Because if you get absorbed in the tactical stuff, and this is where it gets kind of in fuego, it can lead to the second underlying principle, which is avoid creating doubt that you're the right solution. And what do I mean by this? When you create opposition, it forms this sense where the other party starts thinking, maybe I need to be looking at some contingencies, or maybe I need to be considering what some other options could be. And, so some examples like this are, if in negotiating an employment contract, the process of interviewing is often super buoyant, super upbeat. Everyone's excited about the future and really excited about the opportunity of working together. It's like, as the employer, we're really excited about the person's really excited about the opportunity. As soon as we're talking about the actual commercials, there's just something that tends to kind of tense in the agreement for most people. And we're going to talk about that more in the following videos when we talk about knowing your worth, which actually, if you don't really have that fully established within yourself, creates some tension in this, because it feels, but more on that later too. But the thing that you really want to be doing is making sure that there is this sense that you can really work through any of the obstacles that you are facing in terms of like getting on the same page with the negotiation. So All right, these are the overarching principles. I want to talk about the underlying fundamentals of controlling the negotiation. So what I was just alluding to is the first, which is tone. So there's two underlying fundamentals that I'm going to discuss in this video. I'm going to discuss the fundamental, I'm going to talk about some examples of it, and I'm going to talk about how from a nervous system regulation standpoint, you can really start to build some capacity and optimize and be more effective in a negotiation as a result of that. So for tone, so very common that you present an offer to someone and they kind of recoil, or their reaction is it's just like, it's not positive, like it's sometimes not negative, but just that it's like this kind of reflexive moment. And this is the thing I want to really emphasize. So for tone, you always want to be setting the sense of optimism for the future. And so if you have not cleaned house as far as your feelings, your emotions, your sense of self, even like you're like reducing the level of shame you have about wanting what you want, a lot of times what happens is in this moment of being very vulnerable and receiving an offer, and I'm going to talk specifically about employment contract or reference it here, is what it does is just surfaces up a lot of unresolved stuff. And what happens because of that is that comes into the negotiation and begins to create doubt, and even in commonly like at least low grade levels of opposition. So, so the thing with tone is you just want to really remain, like the first response is always thank you. And the fact that a lot of the stuff that's bubbling up tends to feel like it's like important parts of, your integrity because it's really emotional is, I actually want to contest that and say that just because it's emotional doesn't mean it's actually going to be supporting your greater good, and greater outcomes for you. So the other is time and controlling time. So, like in a negotiation, that, how quickly things move, and the person that's actually like increasing the velocity of the deal is the person that's actually in control of it. The person who's controlling time in a deal is the person that's actually controlling the deal. So, so we're going to talk a little bit about that here. So I'm going to first talk about tone. So for establishing positive tone, one suggestion I'd have with this, and I'd have more, but in the interest of time, I'm going to try to zip this up, is whenever you're receiving something, and this is where nervous system regulation is very important. In the next section, I'm going to talk about like reducing and avoiding emotional contamination in these dynamics, is being able to really control your initial reaction to an offer. So, do not say, oh, this isn't what I expected. Or do not say, I'm not happy about this. What you want to say is, I'm excited. Thank you. Is it fair to ask for a day or two to, review and discuss this offer? And even the positioning of just saying, I think we're close. I think we're close. And it's really subjective whether 10, 20, 50, whatever, however, what you're asking for, like what that means as far as closeness. But as far as keeping the tone really buoyant, it's just really important to stay in the holding a position of optimism for your excitement about the role, which is the, kind of the big picture, and then kind of folding in your desires for improving an offer, if that's the case. So, so one of the things with tone, and I'm going to put the page numbers in this video, is that, so if you're following along in Parinama method on page 278, there's the, the emotional hygiene practice, which really helps. I mean, all the practices ultimately help with really clearing out the residual holdups and hangups that make these interactions sometimes reflexively demonstrate things that we don't really want to necessarily have out there, which is getting defensive or getting emotional about stuff when it really serves us not to. And I'm going to put the rest of the pages for the exercises that support this. Also on page, it's 208 on tone for the sixth hub is also really helpful here for doing some exercises there. I think in the fifth hub, actually no, 208 is where to go there. And so last but certainly not least is time. And time is something where, especially when people are feeling emotionally activated, what will happen is that they will like reflexively feel like they're on the hook to answer something right away. And what you really want to be doing is slowing the roll so that you have time to actually move out of reflex and move into actually being able to control tone and being able to make sure that you're actually like how you're phrasing things is going to be serving your ultimate best interest. So there's a couple ways to get time. One of them, like honestly, and this is something that seems, if in the moment seems simple, but it's really worth stating, is take a breath. So just give it a beat. Or if you need more, like, so it's kind of, and even that, so you can tack on top of that is saying, that's going to take some consideration. Like, let me get back to you on that. So just get yourself out of the notion that if somebody asks you a question or offers you up, like an offer of any sort, is that answering it right away is a requirement. Sometimes you'll notice that they might push you on that and realize back to the idea that the person who is controlling the time is controlling the negotiation. So it's just a control tactic, and not necessarily to be offended by that, but recognize it for what it is. And, to a certain extent, be like, hey, I respect that. The other is, is to say, like, would it be fair to ask for some time to look this over? So even for, so like back to job offers, to say, thank you. I'm so excited about this. Would it be fair for me to ask for, a day or two to, review this with my partner, my, whoever, my family. So this is the part one of, I think, what's ultimately makes this a 5-part series. The next piece is going to be the emotional contamination. So it's like managing like the charge in an interaction is an incredibly important part of being able to remain in control and functioning and keeping the negotiation moving in your favor. The other is knowing what other people want. So you can really start to, as far as like avoiding opposition, is really staying on the same page about a shared outcome, shared optimal outcome. The other is knowing your worth. And this exploration is really about being able to come in without this being unresolved. And it's surprising to me how common this is, that people come into a negotiation for, I'm talking right now about like salary, job position, and and other benefits, expecting the organization to tell them what they deserve, or being offended if the organization does not offer them what they perceive or believe or know that they deserve. And so as a result of that, offense can be taken rather than just knowing like, oh, this is not actually in line, and it not actually being like, you're telling me what I am, so this is actually like affecting my sense of self. So more on knowing your worth and some of the nuances with that. And the last is reducing shame, or eliminating shame about wanting what you want. So this is really the part of negotiation, which is, instead of second guessing yourself about, like ultimately what your aspirations are, what even you want for, as in like for your end. So we talked about what the other party wants, but really getting into a place where you're reducing any sense of like shame around wanting that, because that actually affects a lot of people, where they kind of go, you know what, maybe I'm asking for too much. And going back to the initial premise of this video, which is that, a relatively like small number of negotiations affect the entire like construct of our lives. These are places that like even like making these smaller concessions of saying like, you know what, maybe I should just kind of like count my blessings and accept what's being offered when it's, it's like not exactly what you want. Important to really come into like a conscious place on this. So So if you please like this video if you found it helpful, and subscribe if you want to see the next sections that will be coming up. And you know, first of all, like, thank you for watching, and anything that you have in terms of your thoughts on this, or you know, anything that I haven't been clear about, or maybe you know, not like articulated particularly effective, like please drop it in the comments. I love hearing you know, what people have to say. It means a lot to me. But again, please like, please subscribe, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. All right, bye.